Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking our first look at this model here. This is the new AVIOS Bush Mule. Now a lot of you out there probably like me in that you've been waiting for months for this model because it was teased by Stuart back in April, might have actually been March this year, and here we are and it's finally available. So I need to say a very big thank you to Hobby King. They've managed to get me one of the very first production units hot off the press, or hot out the mold I guess, and get that to me here. It's so new, in fact, when it's shipped to us here that the manual was just being finished, so I had to kind of figure out how it put together. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the build process. The build is very straightforward. You'll have this thing together in about 20 minutes. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other planes that it's like, and then I'll go through some of the features as well. Now this model here is a 1.5 meter wingspan, just under 1100 millimeters long, weighs just over 2.2 kilograms, and has an awful lot in common with the original Sky Mule. Now the original Sky Mule is something I was very interested in getting my hands on, because last year when I got my hands on the Tundra, I was a massive fan and loved the way the Tundra flew. And the Sky Mule looked to me like it was a twin-engine version of that Tundra and would allow me to do other kind of things that I wanted to try out as well. Things like differential engine mixing and those kind of bits and bobs. It looks like Hobby King took all of the stuff that people responded to really well about the Tundra and have brought out this new version of the Sky Mule, the Bush Mule, with all of that coolness in here as well. So in a way I'm pleased that I hung on, because this will give me all of the things that I really liked about the Tundra. So it's going to be really fun to fly, have a very short takeoff and landing with those massive flaps. It is going to be easy to take off and land on uneven surfaces because of these huge Tundra-like wheels. So I'm looking forward to putting this through its paces over the next couple of weeks. And when I've done that, I'll come back and talk a little bit more about it, and also share a little bit more about the Tyrannus radio setup, with things like setting up the differential throttle control on the two engines and those other pieces too. So let me very quickly go over the specs that I have here. I'm actually making this video before the product has been formally released, so unfortunately I can't link to the actual page and the specifications. I'm going to have to go off what I've got here. So this is from the side of the box. It's a 1.5 meter wingspan. It's just under 1100 millimeters long, weighs about 2.25 kilograms, two 35-36 850k motors, and it has the reversing ESCs just like the Tundra had. So if you have it with the floats, which are optional for this product, then you can put the motors into reverse and you can go backwards. Very, very handy if you're getting close to the edge of the pond or the river or whatever it is that you're taking off and landing from. So let's very quickly go over some of the key features. Just like the Sky Mule, if you take off the front hatch, now this hatch actually has a replacement one as well. In the kit there's also an FPV hatch which has the majority of this material scooped out, so you can mount your camera, your gimbal, your FPV electronics all on there as well if you want to make this into an FPV craft. And it could be a fab FPV vehicle actually, because you're not going to get any props in the way at all. You're going to be forward of the props and looking into clear air. There's some nice touches. There's some LEDs on the model. There's a flashing red LED just behind where the wings bolt into the main body, and then in each wing there are navigation lights at the end and also white lights pointing forwards. All of those are covered by thin clear plastic. Now one of the things I will say is in this video you can't really see the lights very well, but anything apart from bright sunlight you do start to get the effect, and particularly at dusk and flying in less than ideal conditions, they are a welcome help for orientation, as well as adding that little bit of scale detail too. The flaps on this thing are absolutely massive, just like on the Tundra, and very similar to what was on the original Sky Mule. They'll drop down into a full 90-degree position. So I've got mine set here for a 2-position flap setup, so if I want to float this thing in and have a very short takeoff and landing, I absolutely can. The really nice thing, of course, with these is that they are right behind the actual props themselves. There should still be quite a bit of authority from the ailerons and from these flaps actually being in the airflow of the prop, so it's going to behave a little bit different, I'm guessing, from the Tundra. One of the features that I'm really excited about playing with is this thing here, this cargo door at the back. Now I've added a slow up and slow down effect on the Taranis radio for this particular control, so it lowers and raises into the body in quite a scale detail. But you can access the cargo compartment, I guess if you want to call it that, with this small hatch at the side of the plane as well. Even with the struts in place supporting the wing, you can still open the hatch, and if you, I don't know, want to put candy in here for candy drops or little army parachutists or whatever it is that you want to play with, then this provides a nice way to get into the middle of the plane, and is also handy for accessing things like the radio receiver and those pieces too. The front wheel is nice and big. We'll look at the wheels a little bit closer in a second when I show you how I've put this thing together, but it is steerable. Although on this video it looks like the front wheel isn't moving much at all, you'd be surprised how much this allows you to steer on the ground. And again, with mixing in some differential thrust along with the rudder, this is a very easy model to steer on the ground. Now, because of all these features that we've got the ailerons, we've also got the throttle, elevator, rudder, we've got the gear door, we've got some other pieces as well as the reversing channel for the ESCs. You do need an 8-channel receiver for this. I'm using an X8R, and I'm using every single one of the channels because you've got to have 2 independent throttles for both of the motors, particularly if you want to set it up to use any kind of differential thrust. So I will do another video where we talk about exactly how I've got this all set up and take you through the radio configuration for this model, because there is a couple of extra things that you need to consider because we have the reversing ESCs and also we have that additional engine as well. To build the model itself took me about 40 minutes from start to finish. All of the pieces as they come in the box are in these plastic bags. The controls horns are connected, the servo horns are all ready. The majority of mine were pretty good actually, they were pretty close to the 90 degrees they needed to be. As I always do, I use a little servo checker to make sure that one, the servos are happy before I start bolting things together, and secondly that I have a rough idea that the middle position, the 1500 microsecond PWM pulse position, is at 90 degrees to the control rod. And I recommend, if you're going to do that, have a go at that yourself. Whenever you're making an airplane, it's always heartbreaking if you get to the end of the build and find that one of the servos isn't particularly happy. To put the main wing together is relatively straightforward. The middle section that has the engine nacelles and all of the connectors for the controls, you just bolt the other 2 wings on the outside. There are these thick aluminium spars here that you put in between the wing section and the main engine part of the wing here to provide extra rigidity. There's a couple of plastic pieces that kind of snap home to make sure it's in place, and each of the wing sections are held onto the main body of the wing with 2 bolts as well. To install the rear tail feathers is really easy too. They're held in place by 2 very long screws, but what I did just for security is also put a little thin layer of epoxy on the surfaces and put the tail together, and then put the screws in from underneath to hold it all in one place, just for that extra peace of mind. If you wanted to be able to remove the tail after the fact, you could omit the glue and you could take those 2 screws out and then be able to remove the tail feathers. The main part of the landing gear is all pre-assembled with the little spats and everything, so they just go into the slot underneath, and there's a couple of little plastic clips that you hold in place with some self-tapping screws. As the front part of the landing gear is steerable, then you have to pop it through this hole in the front of the fuselage, and then there's a little arm at the top that you screw onto it. It's held onto it by a grub screw. There is a very clear flat spot being ground into the shaft that comes up into the body, so you just connect that on, and there's a little servo here in the nose that you connect the rod to. Quick tip on the rods while we're looking at that: there's actually 3 lengths that you have to manually connect, one for the rudder, one for the elevator, and one for this front steerable nose wheel. Double check that you're using the very shortest rod for the steerable wheel. The shorter rods do look like they're the same length, but you actually look at them closely, you'll find that one of them is slightly longer. So make sure that you have the shortest one in for your nose wheel, and the other 2, then it's obvious which way round they go to connect the control surfaces at the back of the plane. The wing connects onto the body with 2 long screws, so that's relatively straightforward to take off and add. Once you've got the wings in position, the other nice touches there are the struts that go from the plastic plate that holds the undercarriage at the bottom of the plane. And this again is slightly different from the original Sky Mule. The original Sky Mule had the undercarriage wheels actually mounted below the engine nacelles. I think this is a slightly nicer option here, having it on the body, and it's probably less prone to damage than having them out dangling under the wings. And you get these little clips that you can use to hold these in place, which again, I love the idea of the clips because it means that if you do want to take the wings off for transport, you can pull the clips, undo 2 screws, and the whole wing will come off for transporting it around. Once you've got all that done, then it's just a case of setting up your receiver, plugging everything in, popping the props on and giving everything a test. So I'm going to continue to fly this over the next couple of weeks, so join me in a week or two where I'll come back, we'll do a little bit more of a video about how this thing's flying, the battery selection, the all-up weight, and also spend a little bit more time talking about how to optimize the model setup on something like OpenTX and Taranis to get the best out the Model 2. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.